listens to music first, always.
We are unstoppable.
Open the frontiers to make people meet people.
Music is not fireworks. Music is feeling.
You're good to go.
Thank you both for the music.
This is Vote for the Music, the Eurovision podcast.
Hello and welcome back to Vote for the Music, the Eurovision podcast. I'm your host, Benjamin Windibank, and we continue to look at Melodifestivalen 2024. Now, it's been a big weekend. We've had our fifth and final heat of Melodifestivalen and the final qualification round, which has sent two of our previous second chance songs or Andrew Chance songs or semi-finalist songs, if that's what you want to call it, through to the final, and it's been a whole deal. And we're going to look at what just went wrong, because with the exception of Jay Smith and Annika Wickerholder, it does not seem like anyone at all is happy with what happened with the final qualification, and more than likely it's going to have to be altered all again next year. So let's take a look at just what went wrong there. So first of all, I'd like to make an apology. Due to technical issues, our preview of Heat 5 was not able to be produced and released in time for Saturday night, so therefore there was not an episode last week. But do not fear, because we have this extra episode here looking back at Heat 5 of the final qualification, and then it will be coming for you on Friday with a preview of the final, which will be taking place in Stockholm. And because I'll be going there, I'll be reporting from Stockholm for you for an episode which will be coming out next week, looking back at the Melodifestivalen final and talking about Sweden's entry for the Eurovision Song Contest 2024. So, Heat 5. First of all, we had our 6 songs in Heat 5. 2 of them go through direct to the final. 2 of them go through to our final qualification round, which happened later in the show. So the songs we had were Marcus and Martinez, Unforgettable, Chelsea Muko, Controller, Jay Smith, Back to My Roots, Electra, Bani Mai, Annika Wickerholder, Light, and Medina Que Sera. So of those, Marcus and Martinez, Unforgettable, and Medina Que Sera went direct to the final. Marcus Martinez coming first, Medina coming second, and then Jay Smith and Annika Wickerholder went on to the final qualification round, where they, amongst the other 10 songs that have been there built up from the last 5 weeks, all battled it out with a new vote and an old vote in a very complicated system, which I will try and explain in a bit, to get through to the final. However, the 2 songs that got through from the final qualification round to the final, our 2 second chance songs, were Annika Wickerholder, Light, and Jay Smith, Back to My Roots. Yes, the 2 songs from Heat 5. So all those other 8 songs, all the songs we've been building up over the previous 4 weeks, and everyone had hyped up, and everyone was getting excited about, and had been built and built and built up, all for nothing. Because the 2 songs that were played only half an hour previously were the 2 which got through. But looking back at Heat 5, the 2 big stories, of course, are our 2 direct to the finals, our 2 DTFs. Marcus and Martinez Unforgettable, which is currently the favourite to win Melodifestivalen by a huge proportion. The biggest margin I've seen, apart from maybe Lorene's Tattoo, and apart from that, I don't think anything's come close. And then Medina Que Sera, which, again, came second in the qualification, although it only just qualified as a DTF. It was very close to Annika Wickerholder Light. But that's a big crowd-pleasing song, which we will see in the final next week. They, of course, did come third in 2022, if that is a familiar name to you. So Marcus and Martinez, also a familiar name. They were in last year in 2023, and they came second with Air to Loreen. So if Loreen hadn't been there, they very likely would have been the Swedish entry last year. So now, with no Loreen in their way, it looks like they're going to manage to do that this year with their song Unforgettable. The song, if you've not heard it, is like Air, but turned on its head. It's very much the same structure, doing the same thing, but it's far darker, it's far cooler. It relies far more on a rhythmic drop, so when they stop singing and it drops, the drop is sort of this sort of chasing rhythm again and again, and then it builds up and up and up, and then it stops, and the stage is left silent, and then applause. It's very powerful, and it works very well. The staging is probably some of the best staging we've seen at Melodifestivalen ever. Again, this on a staging level, I would compare it with as good as what Loreen did last year with Tattoo. A very high standard of staging here. It's very exciting if Sweden can take this to Malmö and then pull this off in Malmö on their in the round stage. They could create a very big moment, and I really don't think it's out of the realms of possibility that Sweden could take it for a second time with this. The staging is remarkable, the song is very good, and Marcus and Martinez are very talented and charismatic performers that are well known in lots of different European countries, particularly around the Nordics, but also into parts of Eastern Europe, into parts of Central Europe. So they have profile. So we'll go more into this in our next episode previewing the Melodifestivalen final. I think it will get a strong jury support, a strong televote. Maybe it might not top the televote, maybe it will come second, or maybe it will. But I'd find it very unlikely that Marcus Martinez are not Sweden's entry for the Eurovision Song Contest this time next week. But anything could happen, we'd have to wait and see. So, looking at Medina, our other direct to the final qualifier from Heat 5, and their entry, Que Sera. Now, this song, like what they normally do, it's a big sort of stadium anthem, party song. It's very much like a World Cup song. This one was far more like a World Cup song than their song beforehand. The staging itself was a bit odd. It was a bit like Mickey Nuna's Lavender, with sort of a house and a guy on a bicycle, and they sort of cleaned up their image as well. They were looking quite trendy, which I'm not sure quite worked, but it was good enough to get the crowd going, to get everyone excited, and to get everyone in that big Melodifestivalen mood. So that will go down very well in the final. Is it a winner? I doubt it. But if that was Sweden's entry, that would be the kind of thing that would be absolutely great as a host entry, because it's just something that really is going to get the crowd together. It doesn't necessarily have to be the most competitive, but shows a different side of Sweden, and it is the only song in the final with any Swedish in it. So if there's going to be a Swedish language song, it's going to have to be this one. But again, Sweden have not entered in Swedish since 1998, so that is unlikely. So our final qualification songs, and they are the two final qualification songs that are in the final. So 4 of the 6 songs in Heat 5 did get to the final are J Smith, Back to My Roots, and Annika Wiggeholder Light. So J Smith won Idol in 2010, Swedish Idol 2010, but it's called Idol because they don't put Swedish in front of anything. It's just Idol, it's just talent. That's Sweden. Anyway, so he won Idol in 2010, and he's come now 14 years after that with Back to My Roots in Melodifestivalen. He's so obviously, as someone who won Idol, he appeals to a very specific part of the audience, and because he won it 14 years ago, he's very much appealing to the sort of audience who are in the 30 to 44 age category and the 45 to 59 age category specifically. And yes, those are the ones that gave him 10s and 12s in the age voting. I suppose from a UK perspective, it would be like if the winner of the X Factor 2010 came and tried it out for the Eurovision Song Contest for the UK. In this case, that would be Matt Carlisle, which, you know, he's not had quite as such of a successful career as Jay Smith has had in that time, but it's that sort of thing. It's appealing to a certain demographic, and that managed to get him the 4th place spot in the heat and into the final qualifier, and then he got the 2nd place spot in the qualification thing. The song itself is very much a sort of country song. It sounds like something you would have heard in the American Song Contest, definitely, but not something that necessarily would have got to the final of the American Song Contest, so you do have to raise a few eyebrows at that, but very much it is star power, name power, which seems to have propelled him into this position. But that was to expected. Everyone expected him to get that final qualifying spot because of this. And then we've got Annika Wiggeholder Light. This song sort of came from behind. It worked very well on the night. People didn't necessarily expect a lot of it, but suddenly it surged in the voting. It very much worked in the arena. So out of everything, this made sense to go through, and this went through in that 3rd position to the final qualifier. Then the other 2 songs we had in the 5th heat were Chelsea Muko Controller, which was sort of an Afrobeat style song where they changed certain lyrics to finish in so it rhymed. I didn't think much of it, but yeah, that came fifth in the heat out of 6. And then there was Electra, Banima, which came last, although only second to last overall if you're going just by points, because Molina Borglo came slightly lower with 26 points as opposed to 28 points. But Electra was from RuPaul's Drag Race Sweden, and Banima is what you'd expect from quite a poor drag song, really. It was entertaining to a degree, but it wasn't sung particularly well. I say sung, none of it was really sung. It was all essentially spoken word or shouted word. And there was a strange spoken word bridge, which didn't really work because the rest of the song was spoken word. So there were a few issues with the song there, but the main hook of it seemed to work quite well, but nothing else really did. But yeah, it was a show, it was a performance, but it's very obvious why this came in 6th place. So anyway, once we had that heat, and that was the hour and a half, and we had all our qualifiers and results from that, Karina then came out again in a new costume, like she'd begun a new show, even though it was literally seconds after the last one had finished, and we hadn't credits rolling because there were no credits to roll. And we started the final qualification as it was a new show. It was rather odd. And so, for those who don't know, Melodifestivalen has long had a second chance system called Andra Chansen, which has been there since 2002, although it was originally called the Winner's Choice for a couple of years. Essentially, it was a separate show after the 4th heat, where, depending on how many there were, 2, 4, whatever songs it changed over the years, could get through to the final that didn't originally get a DTF based on the viewer's choice, based on getting a second chance. And this has long been an aspect of Melodifestivalen. In the first few years, this was sort of a tape show, which happened from studios where they played back the performances, but they got them in full, and people voted on that, and it was sort of held a couple of days after the 4th heat, so it wasn't on its own separate week. And then they turned it into a proper full show in 2007. It was another week of it, so it became the 5th week, and it was Andra Chansen the 5th week, where originally it was sort of a system where each song duelled each other, and they went to sort of a semi-final and then to a final, and then 2 got through. It was very complicated, and then they simplified it, and then it went into the random duels. And it's basically every couple of years they completely change it because it never works. And the big problem they had was the viewing figures were always lower for the 5th week, always lower for Andra Chansen, because people didn't tune in when they saw it as a second chance show, when they saw it as something which was less important, where it was sort of the extra week. Whereas obviously the final would get the biggest viewing figures of them all, so it was sort of the viewing figures would rise, drop right down, and then rise to the top. It was very odd, and obviously SVT weren't happy about this. They tried to counter this in 2022 by revamping it and renaming Andra Chansen to the semi-final. So people would think quarterfinal 1, quarterfinal 2, quarterfinal 3, quarterfinal 4, semi-final, final. So 2 songs would go direct to the final, 2 songs would go direct to the semi-final, and then 4 would get through from the semi-final to the final. The rebrand didn't work. People saw through it. They said, well, this isn't a semi-final, this is just Andra Chansen with a new name, and that's precisely what it was. So after 2 years of trying that out, they've now extended it to 30 songs, put 6 songs in each heat instead of 7, 5 heats. So there's 2 extra songs overall, but it's 5 heats. And then they've put this qualifying round on to the end. But the problem here is instead of it being a week after the final heat that we get this, so, songs have time to build and people have time to have it in their heads. And then also on the 5th week, you got a full performance of all the Andra Chansen songs. Here, you don't get that. You get a 40-second clip of all of them and then a vote. And of course, the public being the public, if they're seeing 40 seconds of 10 songs, some of these songs they've not seen for a month, and then they see a song which they've seen a full 3-minute performance of about half an hour ago, and then 40 seconds of it to go, oh yeah, that was good half an hour ago, and it's a shame that didn't get through, then they're going to vote for the 2 songs that they saw half an hour ago. And what happened, lo and behold, the 2 songs they saw half an hour ago from Heat 5 were the ones that got through. And not just that, all the voting seemed to correlate to what was the oldest and what was the newest, really. Which is precisely what SVT did not want to happen, and is precisely what has happened. So there were some elements to try and counter this. So they were trying to do quite a Eurovision-like voting system where they had an original set of points, like the jury points, and then they added new points to it. So what they originally had was, and God help me, because this is immensely complicated to explain. So they had a first round which was based on the points on the original heats. So what they did is they went to each heat and took all of the qualifying round songs. They got all the votes for their songs from that heat and divided it by the amount of voters in that heat. And once they had that figure for all of the 10 songs, they then distributed that among 1,000 points. If it worked out that one of the songs got sort of 10% of all the votes, they gave them 100 points. So it meant at the beginning of the qualifying round, if this makes any sense to you, they showed all these points based upon the original results from the previous weeks. So it was trying to balance it out by showing, well, this is what they originally got, and we've just distributed it among 1,000 points. So everyone started on a certain amount, so that put Frock and Snusk in first place with 111 points, and Alicia Lundström, Forever Yours, in last place with 84 points from the original points from the heat. And then they showed the recap and opened the voting so everyone could vote for their final qualification songs, and then they added the new points on there. But the new points were all of the votes from the final qualification that had just been voted on, distributed from 1,000 points again, and then added onto that. So it was sort of a 50-50 system. The problem with this is the final qualification votes were weighed heavier because people had seen where their favourites had come on the scoreboard. So if your favourite was Alicia Lindström and you'd just seen that she finished last in the overall heat voting, the original voting, the first round of the voting, got 84 points and you can't do anything about it, then you're not going to vote for her in the final qualification round. You're going to vote for someone higher up on that scoreboard. So showing that already before the vote opened meant the app voting and the tele voting was different to what it would have been otherwise. So what they did is they went to the bottom one in the first round and went up in a Eurovision way. So Alicia Lindström was last. So they said, Alicia Lindström, you have 84 points. You receive from the final qualification points 58 points, giving you a total of 142 points. So they went up and up and up. And of course, the big story of this is Frock and Snusk, Unga and Freya, which was the top of the scoreboard in round one, is the current number one in Sweden. It's number one in the charts right now. It's been number one for the last week or so. Now, that never happens with an Anders Hansen song. It's gone huge. It's a huge song. It is the actual number one single in the charts. And of course, it was top of the leaderboard already. And in any other system, this very likely would have gone through. But we went up and up and up, and we could see Frock and Snusk there. And it was still there, still not getting its point because it was at the top. And suddenly we get Annika Wickeholder goes right to the top. She was in this heat and she gets our first spot in the qualifying round. And we only have one more to go. We only have Frock and Snusk's point to go. Jay Smith's already there, but we don't know if he's got it because he might drop down to third place. Frock and Snusk hasn't got her points. Annika Wickeholder has got that spot and they go and give her a reprise. So we still don't know how Frock and Snusk has done yet. But we've got a whole reprise that takes 3 minutes plus a bit of faffing about. And she goes and performs and she's through and it's great. Everyone's happy. Well, people aren't happy, but you know, people are clapping along, enjoying the song, whatever. And because we've only got 1,000 points on the second round and we've got all of the points apart from Frock and Snusk's points, anyone with a calculator was able to add them all up during this sort of 5-minute interval we had before the final results. And anyone with a calculator was able to work out that Frock and Snusk had received 124 points, meaning she tied Jay Smith, who was currently in second place, for second place, because they would both overall receive 235 points. And that's what happened. Lo and behold, everyone had already worked it out, but they announced Frock and Snusk's points, it was 124. They tied 235. So Jay Smith, who had just performed half an hour earlier, and Frock and Snusk, who was the literal number one, both received the same amount of overall points. But because Jay Smith had received a higher amount of points that night in the actual final qualification votes that had just happened because he performed half an hour earlier, it meant that tie broke it, so he went through and Frock and Snusk didn't. Now, of course, people are very angry about this because any system where your current number one in your official singles chart does not qualify has to be questioned. And the fact that 8 songs which have been built over and over weeks and had hype and people had really enjoyed and people have really got behind were beaten by 2 songs performed just a half hour earlier made it all a joke and a mockery, especially considering the fact one of them had only got through on a tie-break against the big favourite. And then also, because of the way the 5 heat format has worked and the way DTFs work, is DTFs tend to go, not all the time, but tend to go in Melfest history to the most famous people in that heat. Because they're 5 heats now, that meant that 10 DTFs were going to famous people instead of 8 DTFs were going to famous people. And before we had 400 chances songs go through instead of 2, as now. Now, it hasn't quite worked out like this because Jacqueline isn't famous, but apart from Jacqueline, everyone else there is famous. So she's the only one that managed to beat the odds. But really, if you're just looking at this by numbers, that means we've got 10 DTFs and 200 chances, so 10 famous people, 2 newcomers really, but it's worked out that 9 famous people and 3 newcomers, where in the old system, you at least would have been guaranteed 8 versus 4. So there's a lot less diversity in the final because, as I said, some people have been carried through on name and star power, which even we got in the second chance round with Jay Smith. So really, we are on 10 versus 2 if you're looking at what happened to Jacqueline. So this whole system has essentially meant that the people who you would assume get through at the beginning, just based on their names, have got through to the final, and that's our finalists. And it's meant a lot of other interesting acts and a lot of other acts which normally would have got to the final anyway, not necessarily won, but been in the final and made a good final lineup and encouraged a lot of viewers into the final to watch it, and not there because of this system. It's almost like the old system in Melodi Grand Prix in Norway they used to have, where they used to have half the final lineup decided by NRK already, with all the famous people pre-qualified to the final, and then all the non-famous people go through their semi-finals. And it's very much similar to that system, except it's sort of gaslighting the Swedish public into thinking they're making that decision. For the sake of trying to get an extra million viewers on that 5th week of Melodifestivalen, has it worked? No, I don't think it has. Yes, the viewers are up, but it's made a mockery of the show. It's made a mockery of the system. No one seems to be happy. And it's meant we've got one of the least diverse Melodifestivalen finals in the history of the programme. So that's only 1 song in Swedish. Last year we had 3 songs in Swedish. We have half the songs written by Jimmy Joker Thornfeldt. Half the songs in the final, 6 out of the 12 songs in the final, written by the same person. We've got a winner which has such ridiculous high odds to win because of the quality of everything else. It has meant that the odds to win for them are as high as Lorene's odds to win were last year. And although Marcus and Martinez could do very well at the Eurovision Song Contest and could even win it, the fact that there is no competition here because of the way the qualification system has worked this year for the sake of trying to get 1 million extra viewers in, and it's completely fallen flat on its face and failed, is utterly ridiculous, and SVT really need to have a hard look at themselves and work out what they value more. Something that has worked for 22 years and yes, has lost them 1 million viewers in the 5th week, but overall people have been happy with, or something which no one is happy with, but more people have tuned into. Because all that's going to happen is if people aren't happy about this next year, then people just won't tune into any of it because they'll see it all as a fix, and you don't want to destroy the credibility of your national final for that, because it's just going to backfire. So what do I suggest? What do I suggest to do? Well, I'd like a return to Andrew Jansen. I think that's the best solution. Just go back to what you had before. It worked. Yes, you might not get 1 million viewers, but oh well, it did work. Or change it to 3 direct to the finals in each heat and get rid of second chance altogether. That is an option. Or the final option is do something like a jury wildcard. Now, how this potentially would work is the fact the juries aren't in the heats at all. They're not there, they're only in the final. It's only international juries at that point. So potentially this would be a Swedish jury. And pretty much what I would suggest is have them sort of be like a backup jury. Have the juries vote on every single heat. And then what you can do is either every week have a third GTF decided solely by the juries, or what the juries favourite was that wasn't the 2 TTS you would have got, or at the end of it to have those scores brought back and seeing what the jury's 2 favourites among the 5 weeks was if you want only 2 qualifiers instead of 5. And that could get something very different because of course there were no juries in those heats, so you'd get a very different set of results from the juries to the televote. But something needs to be done because this system is absolutely insane. The fact it took me so long to explain what had happened and to explain even just the system, the fact they're distributing among 1,000 points and the splitting up per voter, per heat, and all this, and it's just absolute nonsense. So yes, that is Melodifestivalen Heat 5 and the final qualification and the mess that has completely left us in. Join us on Friday before I fly out to Stockholm to see my preview of that final and to see what I think is going to happen, see what we're going to see on stage, hear about all the songs, hear about intervals and all that kind of thing, hear about what countries are voting and my full analysis of that on Friday. But until then, thank you for listening and remember to vote for the music. Goodbye.
This is to music first, always.
We are unstoppable.
Open the frontiers to make people meet people.
Music is not fireworks. Music is feeling.
You're good to go.
Don't you vote for the music!
This is Vote for the Music, the Eurovision podcast.